Chapter 21. You are listening at novelfull.audio. George stunned everyone. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. In the Lawrence family's courtyard. The courtyard was still bustling with activity. Jean accompanied Thetis to see old Master Lawrence. At that time, all the members of the Locks were there. Octavia was very good at adapting to the situation. When she saw Jean and Thetis, she took the initiative to say with enthusiasm, "Jeannie, our misunderstanding turned into a joke last time. I apologize. You didn't take it to heart, did you?" Jean naturally knew how to act too. She quickly said, "You overstated it, Auntie. These few days, I've also been reflecting on myself. I shouldn't have argued with you like that in public. It was my fault." "Don't say that. I was too emotional at that time. We're all family. The past is in the past. Jennifer played the role of a good person. In the future, once Jeannie gets married, please take good care of her." "Of course. I'll definitely treat her like my own daughter." Jennifer and Octavia flattered each other very well. The atmosphere in the room was unusually harmonious because of them. After staying in old Master Lawrence's room for a while, everyone returned to the living room and greeted the guests who came and went. At this moment, George also walked into the living room from the outside and walked to Jean's side. Thetis hated George. When he saw George walking over, he did not look too good. Nonetheless, he knew he could not show it at such an occasion. He simply did not take the initiative to pay attention to George. At this moment, in the large living room, a melodious song came from the piano. Everyone looked over. They saw a child sitting playing the grand piano in the hall of the Lawrence family's manor smoothly. That child was none other than Jeremiah, the son of Thetis's brother, Hugh. For a 6-year-old child, Jeremiah was not bad to be able to play at this level. Obviously, everyone in the hall seemed to be amazed by him. The song ended. Jeremiah left the piano and bowed politely. Everyone in the hall applauded. Octavia stood beside Jeremiah and said hurriedly, "My grandson said that he wanted to play a song to wish old Master Lawrence a happy birthday." "Thank you." Alexander quickly went forward and said, "Jeremiah is so thoughtful." Damien also echoed from the side. The others also complimented him. "Damien, your grandson is really capable. He was just making a fool of himself. You're too humble. If my grandson was as capable as yours, I wouldn't have to worry so much." The others kept praising him. Jeremiah was also very proud. At this moment, he was being led by Octavia to Thetis's side. The smug look on his face made his nostrils turn up. Thetis carried his nephew and sneered at Jean. "Your son can never be compared to him. I'd be embarrassed to bring your son out in the future." Jean gave Thetis a sidelong glance. Originally, Jean did not care about these things at all. Seeing Octavia deliberately showing off in front of her, she felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. She knew very well that Octavia was doing this to take revenge by showing her magnanimity as George stepped on her gown the last time. Octavia was quite sinister to have schemed this. Jean held George's little hand and walked toward the grand piano. At this moment, Alexander and Damien were still there. Seeing Jean bring George over, Alexander's expression changed slightly. Those who were clever knew that given the relationship between the Lawrences and the Locks at the moment, everyone wanted to compare Jeremiah and George. Jean did not care about Alexander's expression at that moment. She carried George and sat him down on the piano. "Jean." Alexander went forward and stopped her abruptly. "Don't humiliate yourself." Even so, Jean still ignored him. She bent down and whispered into George's ear, 80% will do." George nodded. In the hall, many people looked due to Jean's actions. Many people thought that Jean's illegitimate child was unremarkable and looked silly. They thought that she did not know what was good for her for wanting to compete with the grandson of the Locks. Did this ex-princess think that she had not made enough of a fool out of herself? However, at that moment, when a melodious song came from the piano again, everyone was stunned. George was moving his little fingers on the piano skillfully. Every note seemed to be transformed from his fingertips. Even a layman could tell that the melody was much better than Jeremiah's. It was almost as good as a professional performance. Furthermore, the tune that George played was not on the same level as Jeremiah's. George was completely superior to Jeremiah at this time. Everyone was ready to laugh at George, but they were suddenly stunned. The whole venue was extremely quiet. This went on until the song ended. When the song ended, there was no applause. Perhaps it was because everyone was shocked, or perhaps it was because they were unwilling to admit that this illegitimate child who was looked down upon by everyone was so capable. It was until an applaud was slowly heard coming from the main hall's entrance. The person clapping was the famous fourth Master Swan of Southampton City. Teddy felt the gazes of everyone in the hall, and he was on the verge of collapse. He was on the verge of collapse because of his master. They had just left the Lawrence family's courtyard, yet he was suddenly told to return the way they came. Has master been possessed? When everyone saw fourth Master Swan clapping his hands, they hurriedly clapped as well. Alexander came back to his senses at that moment. He glanced at George, then went to the entrance of the hall to welcome fourth Master Swan. Jean carried George down from the stool. She smiled and said, "I should have just asked you to show half of your skill instead." George raised his head and smiled slightly. Thetis strode to Jean's side. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone's attention was on fourth Master Swan, he said fiercely to Jean, "Why are you doing this? You're deliberately making my nephew look bad, aren't you?" Jean calmly held George's hand. "I just didn't want you to lose face, second young Master Locke." Thetis was at a loss for words after hearing what Jean said. "Second young Master Locke, please help yourself. I'll bring George over now." As Jean spoke, she held George's hand and left. She was extremely cold. Thetis's expression was unsightly. This woman, Jean, was married once. What right does she have to act so lofty in front of me? Right at that moment, his phone suddenly rang. Thetis took a glance, and his eyes flickered. He picked up the phone and quickly walked to the side. "I told you not to call me. Have you gone mad? I miss you. I have something serious to do now. Second young master, every cell in my body misses you. I can't control myself." It was an incredibly coquettish voice. Thetis's heart itched when he heard it. When he thought of being treated like this by Jean, he suddenly sneered. Who does Jean think she is? Do I, the second young master of the Locks, lack women? Chapter 22. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Eldest young Lady Lawrence has quite a personality. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The Lawrence family's manor. Alexander personally went over to welcome fourth Master Swan. The rest of the people also rushed over. In an instant, fourth Master Swan became the center of attention. Jean held on to her son's hand and directly walked to the side. Fourth Master Swan seemed to have taken a glance in that direction, but it also seemed to be an illusion. In another corner of the hall, a few women were muttering softly. "Octavia, Jean was deliberately making you and your grandson look bad," a woman gossiped. "I've never seen someone who embarrasses her future mother. In law. I'm afraid she'll step on your head after she gets married to your son in the future." "That's right. Jean is too much. She didn't give you any face at all." Octavia was already displeased, to begin with. She looked grimmer after hearing what those women said. She had deliberately let her grandson perform on such an occasion to compare him with George. She wanted to make George appear useless and to vent her anger at the party last time. It never occurred to her that George, that unremarkable illegitimate child, was a piano genius. The thought of her grandson being outclassed by an illegitimate child made her even angrier. That said, I really didn't expect that son of Jean to be so capable. I thought he was just a good for nothing, a woman added. Yeah, I was also stunned. Oh right, did you see? Even Fourth Master Swan gave him a round of applause just now. I saw. Fourth Master Swan is such a cold and aloof person, yet he applauded for a child. I'm afraid that eldest young Lady Lawrence will become more arrogant. When Octavia heard their conversation, she almost flew into a rage. She looked fierce. No matter what, I'll teach Jean a lesson. In a corner of the hall, Monica quickly rushed to Jean from the entrance. Jeannie. Jeannie could not stand Monica's enthusiasm. So did George. Monica tried her best to pick up George and said excitedly, "Godson, you made me so excited just now. How can you be so amazing? How can your fingers be so flexible?" Jean looked at Monica speechlessly. She looked at her lifeless son. "Godmother, put me down." George was very cold. Monica also found it hard to carry George. She put him down and turned her head to look at Jean seriously. "I think I misunderstood you before." Jean frowned. Was Monica always incoherent when she spoke? "You didn't come back to be trampled on. You came back to shine," Monica said confidently. Jean smiled faintly. "Whatever you say." Her voice became softer. Monica followed Jean's gaze and turned around. She saw Fourth Master Swan. He was walking over with Teddy. Apart from Teddy, there was also Finn and Knox, Fourth Master Swan suddenly said. Jean frowned. "I didn't say anything. Can he read minds? You called for me." Knox, who was next to Fourth Master Swan, was confused. "He came here with Finn and the others. When he arrived, he saw a child playing the piano. He was shocked and felt that the child looked familiar." Fourth Master Swan ignored Knox and said to Jean, "Eldest young Lady Lawrence, please take us to old Master Lawrence so that we can give him our wishes." Jean glanced at Fourth Master Swan and turned around. "Julie." A servant quickly came over. "Take Fourth Master Swan and his friends to old Master's room." "Yes, eldest young Lady Lawrence." After giving her instruction, Jean smiled politely at the others. Then, she turned around and left. Everyone just looked at her. Even Monica was a little stunned at that moment and could not react in time. Knox could not help but say, "Eldest young Lady Lawrence has quite a personality. Every woman would be attracted to you, Fourth Master," yet she did not even lift her eyelids. Monica came back to her senses. Jeannie is just unordinary. How can she be compared to those women you're talking about? Hey, Monica, no one will take you for a mute if you don't speak. You too. Back then, I must have been out of my mind to help you go after Finn. Back then, I must have also been out of my mind to ask you to help me go after Finn." Finn pursed her lips and turned to look at Edward. "Fourth Master Swan, the luncheon is about to start." What he meant was it was their time to go pay their respects. Fourth Master Swan looked away from Jean and nodded slightly. With that, the group went upstairs and went to old Master Lawrence's room. Downstairs, Jasmine looked at their backs and turned to face Eden. "Your fourth uncle?" "Yeah." Eden nodded. He naturally saw his fourth uncle when he came. In the past, his fourth uncle would not attend such banquets. "Was your fourth uncle talking to my sister just now?" Jasmine asked, looking very innocent. Eden's expression darkened slightly. "The last time, he also took the initiative to give my sister the sapphire." "Could it be that your fourth uncle?" "Impossible." Eden denied it immediately. "My fourth uncle couldn't have been seduced by Jean. She's not so capable." Jasmine did not speak. She could not let Jean seduce fourth Master Swan as well. If that were to happen, would she be able to live well in the future? Jean's best friend, Monica. Her husband is my fourth uncle's personal doctor. They just happened to meet, Eden said with certainty. Jasmine smiled. I guessed as much. How could someone like your fourth uncle fall for a woman who gave birth to a child? Speaking of which, I didn't expect George to play the piano so well when he looks dumb and stupid. It surprised me. That said, Jean doesn't know how to restrain herself. She's deliberately trying to compare her son with that child from the Locks. Isn't she afraid that the Locks will deliberately make things difficult for her once she becomes a part of their family? It has been so many years, but she still doesn't know how to conduct herself. She's still so arrogant. She'll have a hard time in the future. Eden said coldly. Jasmine laughed internally. She was just testing Eden's feelings for Jean. Back then, they broke up because she interfered. She was afraid that Eden would be seduced by Jean again. Now, it seemed that Eden was still disgusted with Jean. To Jasmine, the most important thing for her at the moment was to successfully become a swan. Once that happened, she would no longer have to bear the title of an illegitimate daughter. In the future, everyone would have to suck up to her. When she thought of the days to come, her mood instantly improved. As for Eden, who was beside her, he did not look any better. Jean's return this time did not seem to be as simple as they thought. Chapter 23. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Fish has taken the bait. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The Lawrence family's manor was still as lively as ever. After the luncheon ended, most of the people stayed for entertainment. The Lawrence residence also had a large and luxurious entertainment venue. Monica liked to play mahjong. After lunch, she called Knox and Jean to play mahjong with her. Of course, she did not dare to invite fourth Master Swan. It just so happened that she was short of one, and Eden suddenly volunteered to join them. Monica thought about how she could not get revenge on Eden when he cheated on Jean previously. Today, she had to make that B***** lose terribly. Jean did not want to join in the fun, but she could not resist Monica's hospitality. She let George go back to his room and followed her to the mahjong room. The Lawrence family's mahjong room was also a private room. When they walked in, the maid immediately went forward and asked respectfully, "What would you like to drink?" "I'll have black tea," Monica said. "Jeannie likes lemon juice, right?" "Yes." Jean nodded. "I'll have coffee," Knox said. "Coffee boosts my energy. Given your mahjong skills, it's useless even if you take stimulants." "Monica, do you have poison in your mouth?" Knox was displeased. "I abandoned fourth Master Swan to play mahjong with you, yet you're being ungrateful. You're more addicted to mahjong than I am. We met at the mahjong table back then. Don't give me that crap." Monica did not appreciate his kindness at all. She looked very serious as she asked, "Tell me honestly, are you and fourth Master Swan a couple?" Knox rolled his eyes. Jean was also speechless. The waiter asked at the right time, "What would you like to have, eldest young Master Swan and second young lady?" "Milk," Monica answered for them. "Since he likes a cow, of course, he'll have milk." Knox could not help but laugh. He was quick to realize what Monica was implying. At that moment, Jasmine's expression changed. In order to show her upbringing, she forcefully swallowed her anger. Jean also could not stop laughing. It was worth noting that Monica was truly astonishing sometimes. Eden pretended not to hear it and said to the waiter, "Jasmine and I will have coffee. She'll have a cappuccino with more sugar, and I'll have a latte with less sugar." "Okay." The waiter left respectfully. Monica clicked her tongue. It was obvious that she was sneering at Eden's deliberate thoughtfulness and gentleness. Once they were done ordering their drinks, the game began. Everyone became serious right away. Jean had not played mahjong for a long time. Her skills were not good, to begin with, and her luck seemed to be very bad today. She had two crucial tiles at the moment. Just as she was trying to figure out which tile to play, a phone suddenly rang. Knox stopped her for a moment and picked it up. Fourth Master Swan. Where? Playing mahjong. Didn't I tell you just now? Monica asked me to play mahjong with her. I asked where. The voice from the other end of the call seemed to have turned a little colder. You want to come? Knox raised his eyebrow. Yes. F***ck, since when was he interested in playing mahjong? Where are you? I'll go get you. The main hall. Okay. Knox hung up the phone and said to the others, wait for me for a while. Fourth Master Swan is coming. I'll go get him. Hurry up. Monica urged. Knox nodded and left quickly. The other three people laid down their mahjong tiles. Jean said, I'm going to the washroom. Go, go, go. Remember to wash your hands to get rid of bad luck. Your luck is too bad today, Monica urged. Jean also wanted to get rid of bad luck. She would be unhappy if she kept losing. She got up and walked out of the mahjong room and into the public washroom outside. As the washroom was shared, she heard two familiar voices from outside. Mom, it's boring for me to watch you play mahjong here. I don't want to play mahjong either. Just let me leave. I'll be back before dinner. It was Thetis's voice. Brat, it's old Master Lawrence's birthday banquet today. How can you leave? If your dad finds out, he'll beat you to death. Octavia said fiercely. Isn't he discussing business financing with Uncle Lawrence? Why would he care about me? Just let me leave. I'm so annoyed whenever I see that woman, Jean. I'm also annoyed whenever I see that woman. Octavia's face was unsightly. Just thinking about how she embarrassed us in public today makes me want to strangle her to death. That's why I want to take revenge on her. Thetis said in a softer voice. I'm going to go meet another woman. Thetis responded. Are you crazy? Octavia still had a sense of propriety. She knew she could not do anything out of the ordinary at this time. That woman doesn't know what's good for her. Don't worry, Mom. I'll be careful. Octavia still wanted to say something else. Thetis said, don't tell me you really want your son to fall in love with that woman, Jean. Alright, alright. Don't cause any trouble for me. I know you treat me the best. Don't worry, once Jean marries me, I'll surely take it out on her for you. Thetis said with a fawning look on his face. Octavia grinned. The two of them left. Jean walked out of the bathroom emotionlessly. She took out her phone and typed a message. Help me keep an eye on Thetis. Got it. Jean put her phone into her pocket, washed her hands, and wiped them. The moment she walked toward the private room, she suddenly stopped. She turned around and walked through a corridor into an elegant tea room at the innermost part of the room. She hid behind a pillar and heard the conversation inside. Alex, I heard that Asia's largest e-commerce company, MUK Group, is preparing to enter Harkins Market. They're currently looking for our local companies to finance an e-commerce project. Instead of us doing e-commerce ourselves, we might as well use this platform. MOOC. It's naturally a good thing to be able to cooperate with them. Alexander was a little excited. That said, how can you guarantee that they'll choose us? Once everyone knows they're going to enter the market here, the local companies will rack their brains to compete with each other, right? That's why we have to take advantage of the fact that the news has yet to be released. We have to be one step ahead of them. I have an old friend who has a good relationship with the person in charge of MUK's project. As long as their conditions are met, they'll consider cooperating with us. Don't worry, I have all those conditions. Once I meet them, I'll take the initiative to discuss the collaboration with them. By then, the other companies won't stand a chance. It's just that. What's the matter? Didn't we agree to give your family $300 million to develop an e-commerce project? Now, in order to meet MUK's conditions, I won't have enough funds, so the financing will be slightly delayed. Don't worry, as long as the collaboration with MUK is settled, it'll be a piece of cake to get funding from the bank. Alexander thought for a moment and said, working with MUK is the priority, of course. In any case, it's all for working on an e-commerce enterprise together. Isn't there a platform that suits our needs now? By then, we'll have both your collaboration with MUK and the Lawrence enterprise. Don't worry. As long as the collaboration is successful, I'll let you work on a $300 million project for free. That'll be great. We'll be a family in the future. But your daughter, Jean, really needs to be taught a good lesson. It's true that I didn't educate her enough. Don't worry. Before she gets married, I'll make her apologize to the Locks properly. Jean turned around and left. She did not want to waste any more time on unimportant matters. The corner of her mouth suddenly curled into a sneer. The fish had taken the bait. It was that simple. Chapter 24. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fourth Master Swan naturally brings good luck to his wife. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Jean returned to the private room. She stopped in her tracks. The man sitting in her seat was Fourth Master Swan. He was playing mahjong with the others with her tiles at the moment. Jean wondered if she should leave directly. At that moment, she heard Monica's voice, "Jeannie, I thought you had fallen into the toilet bowl. Fourth Master Swan happened to be here to help you change your luck. Your luck was too bad." "Ah, score!" Monica suddenly shouted excitedly. "Pure suit." Monica waved her tiles. "Fourth Master Swan, it seems that your luck isn't much better." Edward took a look. He lowered his head to take Jean's bargaining chips. There were only a few left. Jean walked over. "I'll do it myself." Fourth Master Swan took a look at Jean and stood up from his seat. At this moment, Eden also stood up very politely. "Fourth Uncle, come and take my spot." "That's not necessary." "Knox." Fourth Master Swan called out to Knox, who was clearly in high spirits beside him. Knox stood up speechlessly and made way for him. Just like that, Edward sat on Knox's seat calmly. Another round began. Knox stared at Edward's tiles and smiled very brightly. It looked like he was going to get a pure suit and defeat the three other players. Who said that Fourth Master Swan's luck was bad? Knox was very interested in watching the game. For bamboo. Jean discarded her tile. Fourth Master Swan was the next player after Jean. Just as Knox was about to call for a score, he saw Fourth Master Swan drawing a tile. Knox held it back. It was still early. Edward could draw the winning tile himself. Gnav om after a few rounds. Eden drew a tile himself and discarded one. Monica had also taken the tile Fourth Master Swan discarded. When Jean discarded another for bamboo, Fourth Master Swan reached out to draw a tile again. Knox could not help but ask, "Fourth Master Swan, did you see your tiles wrongly?" "A true gentleman doesn't speak when spectating a mahjong game," Edward said in a low voice. Knox tried his best to hold back. For bamboo. Jean discarded again. The last two tiles. Knox mumbled. Edward continued to draw a tile. At the moment when Knox broke down, he almost jumped up in excitement when he saw that Edward had drawn a 4 bamboo himself. Who knew? Edward kept it and discarded an 8 bamboo. Score. Jean flipped her tiled and said with a smile, "Golden hook with 2 kongs and full tiles." Fourth Master Swan laid his tiles down and calmly took out some chips for Jean. Knox's eyes were wide open. The next round. The round after that. Many rounds after that. Knox finally understood. Fourth Master Swan was not here to play cards. He was here to go after the woman. Monica also could not help but tease. Once Fourth Master came, Jeannie's luck became good. Jean did win back quite a lot. In the beginning, Knox won, but he seemed to have almost lost everything at this moment. Score. Jean happily took the tile discarded by Fourth Master Swan. Knox turned to look at Jean's hand. He had a ghastly look on his face. It was another pure suit. Monica could tell from Knox's expression that Jean's hand was not small. She said, "Fourth Master, you're Jeannie's lucky charm." Fourth Master Swan's eyes moved slightly. Monica sat opposite Fourth Master Swan. She was captivated by the man's casual gaze. How could such a high-quality man be given to someone else? It was right to leave him to Jean. Her thoughts were overflowing. Is that so? At that moment, Fourth Master Swan seemed to glance at Jean. Jean did not look back. Knox added, "He probably has the legendary ability to bring good luck to his wife." Jean pursed her lips. Monica could not help but laugh out loud. This was the first time she felt that Knox had said something that made sense. "Knox, don't make fun of my fourth uncle." Eden did not look too good. Jasmine, who was next to him, was also very unhappy. "Your fourth uncle doesn't mind." "Why do you mind?" Monica chided Eden. "Could it be that you're jealous?" Monica, watch the occasion. "Say, Eden, Monica, it's your turn," Jean called out to her. Monica glanced at Eden and drew a tile. She was suddenly excited. Score. Today, Monica's luck was really good. Naturally, she was in a good mood as well. She smiled and said, "Fourth Master, I've let you spend a lot of money today." Fourth Master Swan said indifferently, "As an elder, it's okay to occasionally lose some money to the younger generation." "You're domineering indeed," Monica flattered him. "Knox," Edward called out to Edward Swan. "I don't have any chips left. Should I buy them?" Knox pointed at his nose. "You lose the money to your wife yourself. Why should I pay for it? If not." Fourth Master Swan raised his eyebrow. Knox accepted his fate and grumbled, "I'm from the younger generation too. So I should show respect to an elder. F***ck. Knox could not help but blurt out, "You have double standards." Fourth Master Swan pretended not to hear it. In the end, Knox still used his money to buy new chips. The mahjong game was nearing its end. Jean had won quite a lot. To be more precise, other than Fourth Master Swan, everyone else won. At that moment, there was a sudden clamor outside the private room. Immediately after, a servant knocked on the door and entered. She looked a little nervous. "Eldest young lady, something bad has happened. Little Master and the Lock's Little Master are fighting." Jean's expression changed immediately. She put down her tile and said, "I'm sorry, I'll have to excuse myself for a moment. Young Master Winter, please take my spot." After saying that, she turned around and left. Knox sat excitedly. He thought that he could finally play. At that moment, he saw that Edward had laid down his tiles. Monica could not sit still either. She ran out with Jean valiantly. She was ready to fight with whoever dared to bully her godson. With that, the mahjong game naturally ended. In order to show her concern for Jean, Jasmine quickly followed her. Everyone also followed her. The Lawrence residence's main hall was on the second floor. There were many people watching from the corridor. Jean walked over. George stood in the crowd with his head lowered. At this moment, Jeremiah was in Octavia's embrace. He cried and shouted, "George hit me. Just now, he pushed me to the ground and scratched my face. Grandma, you have to help me take revenge." Octavia looked at the wound on her precious grandson's face and felt her heart ache. Ever since Jeremiah was young, he had been pampered by them. He had never been wronged. The fire in his heart was also rising. Just as Octavia was about to speak, Alexander was heard yelling at George, "What's going on?" He was obviously furious. Chapter 25. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Locks humiliated themselves. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Jean quickly walked to George's side. George looked at Jean. "George." Alexander's voice grew louder. He was obviously furious. Jean pursed her lips and said, "George, apologize." Alexander paused. At that moment, he did not expect Jean to suddenly compromise. He was prepared for Jean to go against him to protect her son. George bit his lip. "Apologize." Jean looked serious. George felt a little wronged, but at that moment, he still walked in front of Jeremiah obediently and said, "I'm sorry. I don't want an apology. I want to scratch your face." Jeremiah said arrogantly. "Jeremiah." Damien called out to his grandson. "I don't care, I don't care. I just want to scratch his face, I just want to." Jeremiah played a fool, crying and making a scene. "But you also bit me." George seemed to have mustered a lot of courage to say that out loud. "I didn't." Jeremiah denied it. "You said that I embarrassed you, so you bit me. I only pushed you to break free, which was why I accidentally scratched your face." George retorted loudly. "Nonsense. I didn't bite you at all." "I didn't." George rolled up his sleeves, revealing a row of teeth marks. Everyone watched. "You bit yourself. It was you." Jeremiah pointed at George's nose and cried. "How could I bite myself? It was you, it was you." Jeremiah said fiercely, looking like he was quibbling. Obviously, no one believed him. Octavia, who was hugging Jeremiah, felt a little embarrassed. At this moment, everyone felt that it was Jeremiah who bit George first before George resisted. On the other hand, Jeremiah was the one who complained first. Jeremiah. Damien's expression also changed. Originally, Jeremiah was going to attend another banquet with his parents today. They only let him come here just to show off. In the end, not only did he not show off, but he also embarrassed them. "Grandpa, George is lying. I really didn't bite him." "Enough." Damien was enraged. Octavia also said sternly in a low voice, "Jeremiah, stop talking. Why don't you believe me?" Jeremiah burst into tears again. At that moment, he even broke free from Octavia's embrace and rolled on the ground. "That illegitimate child, George, has been lying all along, he has been lying all along." "Jeremiah, shut up." Damien looked grimmer. He did not expect his grandson to be so uneducated today. It was simply too embarrassing. "I'm not an illegitimate child." George suddenly said as he was aggrieved. "You are. Only an illegitimate child wouldn't have a father. My grandmother said that your mother only gave birth to you because she was fooling around with some man. Now that your mother is going to marry my second uncle will suffer a huge loss." Ugh. Octavia suddenly covered her grandson's mouth. She did not expect her grandson to remember what she said about Jean at home. Jeremiah. Damien was infuriated at that moment. At that moment, Octavia hurriedly picked up Jeremiah, who was on the ground, and explained to the others, "This child doesn't know anything and spoke nonsense. We spoiled him too much. I'll bring him back now and teach him a good lesson." Damien's face turned red with anger. Octavia quickly carried Jeremiah, who was still throwing a tantrum, and left. She was afraid that he would say something else, causing the Locks to be completely humiliated. Once they left, the corridor became quiet. Damien immediately smiled apologetically. Well, my grandson might have been too spoiled indeed. George, I'll apologize to you on his behalf. It's okay. George appeared to be very polite. It was a stark contrast to Jeremiah's arrogance just now. He said, in the future, once my mom marries Uncle Wu, Jeremiah and I will be brothers. I'll get along well with him. You're so well behaved. Damien's acting was on point. I'll ask Jeremiah to apologize to you properly later. George smiled obediently. The others were also touched by George's obedience. They felt that he was too sensible. Compared to Jeremiah, who only knew how to behave atrociously, they were like heaven and earth. Alexander also tried to mediate the situation. Isn't it normal for children to quarrel? If there's no discord, there's no concord. Yes, we'll be brothers from now on, Damien instantly said. Alexander called for everyone to leave. Fourth Master Swan stood not far away and watched the whole process. He turned around and left. When he left, there was an obvious smile at the corner of his mouth. Teddy had goosebumps all over his body. Are you leaving? Teddy could not help but ask. Dinner is about to start, and yet he's leaving. Fourth Master Swan nodded. At this moment, Knox also left with him out of habit. Knox was 4 years younger than Fourth Master Swan and had been growing up with him. Knox's grandfather, Will Winter, was once the adjutant of Edward's father, Zachary Swan. Zachary was once a general of Harkin. Later on, due to the change in state power, he abandoned politics and went into business. Will naturally followed Zachary in business, and he vowed to help the Swans manage their business for generations. As such, Knox was taught from a young age to be loyal to the Swans. In Knox's understanding, he was born to be a member of the Swans and would die a ghost of theirs. Now that the head of the Swans was Edward, Knox worked for him. In the quiet car, Knox could not help but say, that little brat isn't simple. Fourth Master Swan's eyes moved. Teddy sat in the passenger seat. He turned his head and asked, Young Master Winter, are you talking about eldest young Lady Lawrence's son? If not, he's pretty good to be able to play such a good tune at such a young age. Teddy agreed. Teddy was an orphan adopted by the Swans. He was only responsible for taking care of Fourth Master Swan's daily life. He had not received any special education from the Swans, so he was relatively simple-minded. Knox smiled faintly. He was not talking about George's piano skills. That said, I'm a little puzzled. Eldest young Lady Lawrence is so good-looking. Why is her son so ordinary? Teddy muttered, I'm sure her son is like his father. His father probably isn't good-looking. What a pity for eldest young Lady Lawrence's good genes. Knox could not help but laugh. He smiled as he looked at the man whose expression was clearly unsightly. Teddy. Fourth Master Swan's voice was a little cold. Fourth Master. Teddy appeared very respectful. You haven't exercised for a long time, right? Fourth Master Swan asked. Knox was stunned. Stop the car, Fourth Master Swan said to the driver. The driver immediately pulled over. Get out of the car, Fourth Master Swan ordered. Me. Teddy pointed at himself. Leave your cell phone and wallet here. Fourth Master Swan sneered. Teddy wanted to cry but had no tears. How did he offend his master? Chapter 26. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Fourth Master Swan looks like a stud. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Teddy was kicked out of the car. Knox could not bear to see Teddy's disheveled and confused look with a hint of pity on his face. He turned around and looked at Edward, muttering to himself, I really can't provoke this tiger at all. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know how I died. Knox took a deep breath and became a little more serious. It seems that someone has tampered with the locks. Edward turned to look. Didn't you ask me to bring down the locks? I originally prepared a project to make the locks empty their assets. I didn't expect that someone would be a step ahead of me. At this moment, the locks is diverting a large number of funds to do an e-commerce project. As far as I know, the repayment date of their loan from the bank is these few days. If this project is void, the bank is very likely going to stop lending them money and will even pursue them for repayment. Once the chain of their funds is broken, the locks will go bankrupt in no time. Edward frowned slightly. Knox asked, do I still need to continue? Not for the time being, Edward said, find out who's making a move on the locks. Okay. Don't let anyone find out. Okay. Knox nodded. Knox might seem careless, but when he was seriously doing something, he was more reliable than anyone else. In the Lawrence family's courtyard, Jean brought George back to his room. Monica followed them. She was so excited that she almost jumped. She said, Godson, how could you perform so well just now? You were so obedient and sensible and made the locks humiliate themselves. I just heard someone secretly scolding the locks, saying that they're lacking in manners. They also said that that darn woman, Octavia, is a blabbermouth who always says bad things about others. Monica was incredibly excited and kept on blabbering non-stop. Jean could not stand it anymore and interrupted her. I haven't seen Dr. Jones around. Dr. Jones. Monica was stunned. Oh, he had surgery in the afternoon, so he left after lunch. Speaking of which, Jean, don't tell me that you've fallen for him. I'm telling you, don't do it. He's a scum. Jean was speechless. Monica's way of thinking was too novel. If you're thinking of dating someone and getting married, I think Fourth Master Swan is not bad, Monica suggested. I'm not interested. Jean directly rejected. Fourth Master Swan has everything he wants. What are your complaints? Monica asked. I have no complaints, I just don't want to. You don't really think that Fourth Master Swan is bad in that aspect, do you? Monica raised her eyebrow. Jean was speechless. She did not think of that at all. I've asked Finn. There's no problem with Fourth Master Swan. Monica gave a positive answer. He just has a cold personality and doesn't like women. Besides, don't you think that Fourth Master Swan looks like a stud? Jean reminded, George is still underage. Monica stuck out her tongue and smiled. In short, Fourth Master Swan can give you absolute sexual happiness. Jean did not want to continue this topic. She changed the topic and asked, I heard that Finn is an orphan. Why are you so interested in him? Monica frowned. Finn isn't as handsome as Fourth Master Swan. Finn was not as good looking as Fourth Master Swan indeed. Fourth Master Swan was the kind of man who could stun women with a glance such that they would not be able to shift their gaze away. He was so handsome that he could be considered the best in the world. Even so, it was also because he was too handsome that people did not dare to approach him easily. On the other hand, Finn was different. He was refined and gentle. He was the kind of man who was not very eye-catching at first glance. After looking at him for a while, one would feel that he was all right. After looking at him for a while, one might then fall for him. Nevertheless, Monica was different from ordinary people. She fell in love with Finn at first sight, but she was also heartless when she wanted to break it off with him. I'm very curious. Why did he become Fourth Master Swan's personal doctor? Jean was surprised. Logically speaking, given Fourth Master Swan's status, it would be very difficult for someone like Finn, who had no background, to get close to. I've asked him before, Monica responded, for someone like Finn who has nothing, what kind of sh*tty luck did he have to get close to fourth Master Swan? Finn said that it was because of his clean background that he gained fourth Master Swan's trust. I thought about it. Although I really hate Finn, I heard that his medical skills are great. He's 29 years old this year, right? Yeah, he's 4 years older than me and seems to be the same age as fourth Master Swan. It was probably difficult for someone his age to become the chief surgeon of Southampton City's Central Hospital. It was indeed not easy. Monica had heard that Finn had performed several world-famous heart surgeries. His medical skills had a certain degree of influence internationally. Alright, can we not talk about him anymore? No matter how good his medical skills are, it can't hide his scumbag nature. Monica said impatiently, I'm going to the washroom. As she said that, she rushed into Jean's washroom. She probably did not want to talk about Finn anymore. Jean looked at Monica's back. She turned her head and looked at George. George lowered his head. Jean asked, did you bite yourself? Given her son's abilities, he would not be bullied by people his age. George did not say anything. Jean lifted George's sleeve and looked at the row of teeth marks. She said, next time, don't bite so hard. Doesn't it hurt? George looked at Jean, thinking that he would be scolded. Jean said, if Jeremiah hadn't come to find trouble with you, you wouldn't have treated him that way. George nodded. He called me an illegitimate child. Do you mind? Jean asked. I don't mind. George looked helpless. My father is dead, and there's nothing I can do. Jean suddenly smiled. It was because. It was funny. George added, as long as you don't die. Jean patted George's little head. I won't die. She had survived so many near-death experiences, so how could she die so easily? Moreover, she also wanted those people with ill intentions to die. Apart from the unpleasant incident that happened in the afternoon, Old Master Lawrence's birthday banquet was successful overall. While the Lawrence family was not considered one of the top families in Southampton City, they were still very considerate in terms of etiquette. They sent off all the guests that night. Jean was called to Old Master Lawrence's study. Alexander, Jennifer, Jasmine, and Joshua were all there. Jonathan said sternly to Jean, Jean, I don't care if you did it intentionally or not, or if you've been wronged or not. I'm telling you clearly now that you must go and apologize to the Locks. Jean sneered and did not say anything. Jonathan continued, during this period, the Locks has been embarrassed many times because of you. Whether it's the charity banquet last time, intentionally letting George steal the limelight this afternoon, or causing that little grandson of the Locks to be humiliated today. In short, you must apologize tomorrow and bring your son, George, along with you. Jean looked at Jonathan and said indifferently, in any case, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. Nothing in this world is absolute. Whether it's right or wrong, it'll be completely different if you change your point of view. At the end of the day, isn't profit the most important thing? Jean raised her eyebrow. Jonathan's face darkened. You took 5% of the Lawrence family's shares. Therefore, you must sell your dignity to the Lawrences. Chapter 27. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Locks who are looking for trouble. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Okay. Jean agreed immediately. She was so straightforward that it was hard to believe. Alexander had been a little afraid of Jean's straightforwardness these past few days. He always felt that the more she was like this, the more something bad would happen. Don't play any tricks, Jonathan threatened, I don't want what happened 7 years ago to be repeated. Don't worry, I'm not that stupid anymore. Alexander, prepare some gifts tomorrow morning and bring Jean and George to apologize. You absolutely can't let there be any conflicts between our families, Jonathan instructed. Jean was very clear that the reason Jonathan did this was that he was worried that the Locks would be so angry that they would break off the engagement. He must have thought that if the Locks managed to work on MUK's project but if the marriage fell apart, it would be a huge loss for the Lawrences. Therefore, Jonathan cleverly made his stance clear in advance by giving the Locks an explanation. Yes, Alexander responded respectfully. Jonathan lectured everyone before letting everyone leave. Jean returned to her room. George had showered and was lying on the bed to sleep. Jean sat on the sofa in her room and looked at the indescribable pictures on her phone. She asked, "George, are you asleep?" "No, can you use the computer with your eyes closed?" "Forget it, I'll ask Kingsley to help me," Jean said to herself. After all, it was inappropriate to let George see the pictures that were unsuitable for children. The next day, Jean was woken up by a servant early in the morning. After getting dressed, she left the Lawrences' manor at 10 o'clock a.m. Only Alexander, Jennifer, Jean, and George were in the car. Jasmine and Joshua did not join them. It was said that the Swans would come to discuss the details of Eden and Jasmine's wedding in the afternoon. According to the etiquette of Harkin, the male party would take the initiative to go to the female party's house to discuss matters. Naturally, the Swans went to the Lawrences' manor. Therefore, Alexander had Jasmine and Joshua get ready at home. They would return after having lunch with the Locks. The car arrived at the Locks' manor. It was also extremely luxurious. The prestigious families in Southampton City were passed down from generation to generation. Most of them were relatives of the previous royal families. They branched out, developed, and the fittest survived. Up until now, there were only 12 families in Southampton City that could truly be considered prestigious families. The Lawrences and the Locks were among them, but their rankings were relatively lower. The Swans was naturally the leader of the 12 families. They were the dominant family. In addition, Zachary from the Swans had contributed greatly to the establishment of the country in the past. Even the current royal family would be courteous to the Swans, so they were even more prominent. At the entrance of the Lock residence, the servants were already waiting for the Lawrences hurriedly welcomed them respectfully. In the main hall, everyone from the Locks was present. This included Damien and his wife, Hugh's family, and Thetis. At this moment, they were putting on airs. Jeremiah seemed to have forgotten the scene of him being so ill-mannered yesterday. At this moment it was all the fault of the Lawrences. Alexander was quite enthusiastic and proactive. Naturally, Jennifer said, "Our old master had insomnia last night. He said that our family has caused yours to suffer grievance these past few days. He asked us to bring Jean and George over to apologize early this morning." "How can that be? How could it be Ms. Lawrence's fault?" "It was all my fault. I shouldn't have lost my temper at George at the charity banquet. At the old master's birthday banquet yesterday, Jeremiah shouldn't have had a conflict with George either. It was all our family's fault. How could eldest young Lady Lawrence be at fault?" Octavia had a sarcastic look on her face. The corners of Jean's mouth curled up into a smile. "She's really changing faces with ease." "Jean, hurry up and apologize to Auntie," Alexander reminded. Jean walked forward. Octavia did not even look at her. When she thought of how Jean had made her suffer so much in just a few days, she wished she could strangle her to death. Once she heard that the Lawrences was going to come and apologize, she had thought of how to deal with Jean and make her submit to her in the future. Jean stepped forward. "Auntie, I didn't know how to behave. If I offended you in any way, please forgive me. You acted tough then talked softly to me after that. Are you playing tricks with me?" Octavia interrupted Jean's words. She did not appreciate her kindness at all. "What do you want me to do then?" Jean asked. "How would I dare to ask you to do anything? If I do that, you'll say that I'm arrogant." Octavia mocked. Octavia, look, we'll be a family in the future. Jeannie is sincerely apologizing to you this time. Just tell her what to do so that you'll forgive her. Jennifer hurriedly tried to ease the atmosphere. She looked like a peacemaker. Jennifer's ability was that she would make everyone think that she was a good person. She was a good person who truly thought of others. Octavia's eyes moved. She uncrossed legs and said, "Since you've spoken, Jennifer, I don't want to make things difficult for Jean. You should know that Jean humiliated the Locks with what she did. I definitely wouldn't mind if she only embarrassed me, but it's no longer a private matter if it concerned the image of the Locks." We understand," Jennifer said in a good tone, "just tell her what to do." "Then I won't beat around the bush," Octavia said fiercely to Jean, "since Jean came to apologize sincerely, and since she'll be my daughter-in-law in the future, I don't want to prolong this conflict between us. I'll just state my conditions." "Go ahead." Jennifer agreed. Octavia spoke with a cold expression. "Firstly, Jean certainly has to apologize for what she did to our family, but a simple apology won't be sincere enough. So, she has to serve tea and kneel on the ground to apologize to me. George also has to sincerely apologize to Jeremiah." Jean's eyes moved slightly. Alexander agreed without thinking. "No problem." "Secondly," Octavia said coldly, "Jean has brought shame to the Locks in front of so many noble families. She must make a post on Facebook to explain the conflict between her and our family during this period. The main point is that she must state that she was in the wrong and deeply regrets her actions. Don't worry, as long as Jean posts it, I'll respond right away. I won't embarrass your family. The purpose of that is just to let others know that our relationship is harmonious." "Sure." Alexander continued to agree to her conditions. "After Jean has finished drafting the posting, I'll show it to you before she posts it." Octavia nodded. Following that, she said, "Thirdly, and most importantly, it's about Jean and Thetis getting married. Everyone knows Jean's character. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to subdue her. Thetis' character is weak. In order for our families not to have any conflicts after the marriage, I think Jean should sign a premarital agreement. I've asked Thetis to print out the contents of the agreement. Thetis, read it out." Jean simply watched the show of the Locks indifferently. She wondered, aren't the Locks afraid of being struck by lightning? Chapter 28. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Cat is Out of the Bag translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. In the main hall of the Lock residence, Thetis held a piece of agreement paper and read it out loud. "First, after Jean becomes a Lock, she must follow the arrangements of the Locks. Don't put on the airs of a young lady. She must be obedient, assist her husband, and educate her children. Secondly, after Jean becomes a Lock, she must immediately give birth to a child. Although the Locks already have a grandson, as the saying goes, children have many blessings. Therefore, Jean must give birth again until she gives birth to a boy. Thirdly, after Jean becomes a Lock, she's not allowed to interfere with all the businesses of the Locks. The Locks are capable and don't need a woman to show her face in public. Fourthly, after Jean becomes a Lock, George had to change his family name to Lock. In the future, he'll be a member of the Locks. Of course, he has to respect and be filial to the Locks. That's all." Thetis looked at Jean and asked, "Can you do it?" Jean's eyes flickered. The terms and conditions stated clearly that she had to be obedient and give birth to a son. She would not be allowed to pry the Locks' assets, and George would be a grandson of the Locks. There was a long silence in the hall. Just as Alexander was about to speak, Jean answered, "Sure." Thetis smiled sarcastically. He knew that Jean was just pretending to be aloof. She was a divorced woman. She should be grateful about being able to get married again and be a part of his prestigious family. How could she still dare to flaunt her power? "Then let's begin. Do everything one by one," Octavia said. I want to sign this agreement first, Jean suggested. Signing the agreement is the only way to explain my relationship with the Locks. Octavia sneered. This woman was more tactful than she thought. She agreed. Okay. A servant respectfully handed over a pen to Jean. Jean took the contract and looked at it again. She signed her name on the contract. After signing it, Damien's phone suddenly rang. He lowered his head to take a look and picked it up. The others also quietly waited for him to finish the call. Damien's expression became more and more unsightly. In the end, he almost threw his phone away. He hung up the phone and fiercely glared at Thetis. Thetis, what good deed have you done? Didn't you learn your lesson the last time you went to jail? I'll beat you to death, you son of a b*tch. As he spoke, he was about to make his move. Everyone in the hall was shocked. All of them stepped forward to stop him. Octavia was also very agitated. She hurriedly protected her son. Why are you suddenly throwing such a tantrum? Damien took out his phone. He was so angry that he was trembling. Take a look for yourself. Look at the good son you raised. Octavia hurriedly took the phone. Unsightly pictures could be seen on the phone. Although the key parts were censored, they were still indescribable. Damien was furious. Everyone on the internet is posting news about you now, Thetis, saying that you've never changed. They even said that our family will be ruined by you sooner or later. Octavia was also enraged when she saw the news. She turned to Thetis and slapped him. You useless thing. Mom. Thetis covered his face. I didn't know that the paparazzi would take pictures of me. I was very careful. Which news agency reported it? I'll kill them. Enough. Damien interrupted him. You son of a b*tch, I shouldn't have bailed you out of prison in the first place. I'll beat you to death. I'll beat you to death, you b*****. As he said that, he became infuriated and went forward to beat Thetis. Octavia tried to pull him away but failed. Damien punched and kicked Thetis, but Thetis did not dare to fight back. Alexander hurriedly went forward to pull Damien away. Damien, don't be so mad. Think about how to solve the matter first. Damien still had to give Alexander some face, so he endured it. Thetis was hit a few times, so he was very upset. He said angrily, you can't blame me for all this. I told Mom, and she didn't object to me going out to find another woman. Thetis. Octavia was so angry that she almost fainted. None of you like Jean, so I could only keep a mistress. Thetis, shut up. Octavia shouted with a hoarse voice. Octavia. Damien heard Thetis's words and went mad again. Your son isn't sensible, but what about you? Dear, it's not like what Thetis said. Octavia's eyes reddened, looking very pitiful. Don't call me. From now on, take Thetis along and get lost. Dear, listen to me. I really didn't. Octavia went forward to tug at Damien. Damien pushed her away coldly. Octavia's life was ruined by her son this time. Her eyes were completely red, and tears immediately fell from her eyes. Jean had always wondered if it was the standard of noble ladies to be able to cry so easily. She looked at the farce of this family with a cold and detached expression. At this moment, Alexander could not persuade Damien any further. No matter what, Thetis' behavior of womanizing had also damaged the Lawrence's image. If he appeared to not care about it at all, it would drag down his family's status. In the main hall, Octavia was bawling. At that moment, Damien's mood became even worse. He said angrily, you only know how to cry. Can crying solve the problem? Pack your things immediately and get out. Octavia cried even more sorrowfully. Hugh hurriedly said, Dad, this matter has happened. Think about how to solve it. Just kicking Mom and Thetis out of the house won't solve the problem. How else can we solve it? Damien roared. Kick Thetis out of the house and cut off all ties with him from now on. His scandals will follow him out of our family. Dad. Thetis heard Damien's determined tone and was shocked at that moment. He gave in right away. Dad, don't kick me out. I won't do it again. I swear I won't do it again. Get lost. Dad. Get lost. Mom, Mom. Thetis quickly went to beg Octavia. Octavia also knew that this was a serious matter. If Damien wanted to kick them out for the sake of the Locke's reputation. She had a sudden idea, so she said, I have a way to redeem Thetis' image and save the Locke's reputation. Damien looked at Octavia coldly. Octavia said, as the saying goes, a prodigal son returned home is worth more than gold. We just need to tell the media that the other party used seduced Thetis and that he's very regretful now. Do you think the media are all fools? Damien could not bear to hear it anymore. I know that the media won't believe me when I say this, but Jean can help Thetis put in a good word in front of the media. If even his fiancée can forgive him, what reason does anyone else have to blame him? When the time comes, we'll bribe some of the media, internet celebrities, professional ghostwriters, and so on. Public opinion will soon pass. Damien was silent for a moment as if he had been persuaded. Octavia said agitatedly, I can accept you kicking us out for the sake of the Locke's reputation, but will it really solve the problem? Thetis is still a Locke, after all. The Locks will still be disgraced if something like this happened, not to mention that we're currently discussing a collaboration with MUK. If the collaboration fails because of this negative news, our loss will outweigh our gain. When Damien heard MUK being mentioned, his expression turned ugly again. It seemed like the only way to solve this problem was to do as Octavia had said. Chapter 29. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Locks knelt and apologized. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. In the main hall. Octavia's suggestion had clearly moved Damien. He turned his head to look at Alexander. At this moment, Alexander was putting on airs. He snorted coldly. Damien, I wholeheartedly wanted my daughter to marry your son. During this period, we've been worried that your family has been wronged. I never expected Thetis to fool around with women outside. Damien, your son's behavior has indeed disappointed me and my family. It's our family's fault, it's our fault. Damien hurriedly smiled apologetically. I also wish that I could beat that son of mine to death. However, will that solve the problem? After all, he's a Locke. No matter how hard I try, I won't be able to cut off ties with him. I want to kick him out too, but when I think about how we still have to cooperate with MUK, I can't possibly ruin our plan, right? That's enough. Alexander didn't seem to care. Alexander, can't betray my daughter and let her marry someone like your son for such a small benefit. We're both parents, so I know how you feel. That said, now that the marriage between our families has been announced and the collaboration with MUK has been discussed, isn't it a pity to suddenly break it off? Even if it's a pity, I can't just watch my daughter go down with you. Alex, my family has let you down. Damien was full of sincerity. Indeed, there's nothing I can do to make up for it. The only thing I can do now is that I'm willing to discuss the collaboration with MUK with the Lawrence Enterprise. We'll split the agreed project equally. Alexander was instantly moved. He looked at Damien. Damien also felt like his heart was being cut. He said, during this period, in order to work with MUK, I've invested over $2 billion to build our e-commerce platform. I've bought over a dozen e-commerce companies, and the bank's mortgage has been overdrawn. I won't let you pay the cost. Once the contract is signed, you can work on half of the project. Alexander looked at Damien in disbelief. Everyone knew that the e-commerce platform was the hottest project at the moment. With the arrival of MUK Group, which was the largest group in all of Asia, the e-commerce transaction that could win over Harkin was just around the corner. I, Damien, will do as I say. Damien affirmed once again. Alexander secretly adjusted his emotions. He looked like he did not care and said, "This isn't up to me to decide." Octavia immediately understood. She hurriedly said to Jeannie, Thetis was muddle-headed for a moment. "I guarantee that he won't do anything to let you down in the future. Can you forgive him just this once?" Jean's eyes moved slightly. That arrogant woman just now had suddenly become humble. Jean did not say anything. Octavia quickly added, "There's no need for you to apologize anymore. I was only trying to scare you just now. How could I really let you do that? Once you become a lock, I'll dote on you more than I can. How could I let you feel wronged?" "Auntie." Jean interrupted her. Octavia smiled with a kind face. "Yes, Jeannie. Do you not mind what happened before this?" "What are you talking about? When have I ever mind? I was just joking just now." "All right then. Let's forget about what happened before." Yes. Octavia nodded vigorously. "But I need you to explain what happened now." Jean raised her eyebrow. Octavia paused for a moment. She did not expect that Jean would ask for more. Jean said unhurriedly, "Auntie, you said that Thetis will never do anything to let me down in the future. I don't know what will happen in the future, but this time, he really did something immoral. Not only did he ruin my reputation, but he also ruined the reputation of my family." Octavia did not look too good. After all, she was being taught a lesson by a little girl. She did not feel good about this. Nonetheless, she could only listen because she was unreasonable. The marriage between the Lawrences and the Locks is based on the principle of mutual benefit. If we break off the marriage, it won't benefit either of our families. I'm willing to accept your suggestion to help save Thetis' image. I knew that you're a good girl, Jeannie. I'll surely treat you well in the future. But Jean said to Octavia, "I need Thetis to kneel and apologize to me. He must promise that he'll never do it again." Octavia's expression changed slightly. Before she could speak, Jean added, "If I remember correctly, Thetis said that you acquiesced to what he did, so I think." Octavia looked at Jean. "You should also apologize to me, Auntie," Jean said firmly. Everyone looked at Jean. For a second, they were stunned by her imposing manner. At the next second, it seemed like it was just an illusion. In any case, Jean was being reasonable. If the Locks were sincere, there was no reason for them to refuse. Damien did not even think twice. He said to Octavia and Thetis, "Didn't you hear what she says? Hurry up and apologize." Thetis was displeased. What right did he have to apologize to Jean, who was a married woman? Why should he even kneel and guarantee that he would not repeat his mistake? What right did the woman have? Thetis. Damien's face darkened. Octavia pulled her son over. "Kneel and apologize." Thetis looked at Octavia. Octavia winked at him. Thetis held back his anger. He knelt in front of Jean unhappily. "I'm sorry." "And?" Jean asked. "I promise that I'll never do anything to let you down again." "What if you do?" Thetis glared fiercely at Jean. "What if you do?" Jean continued to ask while smiling. Her aloof and indifferent look could infuriate one to one's death. "I'll be struck by lightning." Thetis roared loudly. Jean smiled. "It'll be realized very soon." She said, "All right, I forgive you." Thetis stood up from the ground in a very unhappy manner. There would be a day when he would take revenge. Jean turned her head to look at Octavia. Given her age, Octavia still had to apologize to a little girl. If word got out, how would she, the wife of a prestigious family, face the outside world. She secretly gritted her teeth and said, "It was my fault. It was my lack of discipline that caused Thetis to do something that wronged you. I'll apologize to you. I'm sorry. It's all right." Jean smiled. "It's fine as long as you know your mistake." It seemed like a simple statement, but Octavia was completely humiliated. Octavia was so old, yet she still needed a little girl to teach her a lesson. She would remember this account. Jean completely ignored the thoughts of the mother and the son. She said to Alexander, "Dad, I don't want to affect the interests of our families just because of this. I'm willing to face the reporters together with Thetis." Chapter 30. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Press Conference Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Jean's words moved Alexander a little. He did not expect Jean to be so broad-minded at such a critical moment. Alexander let Jean make her choice because he wanted to give himself a way out. Nonetheless, no matter her choice, in the end, she would have to follow his way and face the reporters together with Thetis to resolve this matter. Jean is much more mature than before, Alexander thought. At that moment, Jennifer was also deep in thought about Jean's actions today. Jean was not as simple as she thought. Originally, Jennifer had also come to see Jean make a fool out of herself and to see how she would be humiliated by the Locks. Who knew, the plot was reversed. The Locks knelt and apologized to Jean instead, and Jean even brought a huge amount of benefits to the Lawrences. As such, would Alexander and Jonathan have no choice but to change their opinion of Jean? Jennifer secretly clenched her teeth. She could not allow Jean to continue to act like this. This woman is going to be a disaster. She thought, Alex, since Jean has agreed. Damien opened his mouth and asked. Alexander came back to his senses and said, "Since Jean has agreed, I believe that Thetis has also learned his lesson. This matter will be done according to Jean's instructions." What he said was rather grandiose, but in reality, it was only because of benefits. Since that's the case, let's take advantage of the fact that the matter hasn't escalated. Let's resolve it as soon as possible, Damien said. I want to convene a press conference in the afternoon. That urgent? Alexander asked. We can't delay this matter. If it drags on for too long, I don't know how the news will spread. Moreover, the collaboration with MUK is imminent, so I want to settle this as soon as possible. I don't want other matters to affect the progress of my negotiations. It's just that I have something to do in the afternoon. To tell you the truth, the Swans are coming to talk about Jasmine and Eden's marriage in the afternoon. I have to be there. That's fine. Jean and Thetis will go to meet the reporters in the afternoon. We don't need to accompany them. The young ones can settle their matters by themselves. We shouldn't get involved. That's true. Once we get involved, things will change. Perhaps the media will insist that we're doing it for profit or something. You don't have to worry about other things. Just leave it to me, Damien said. You should prepare for your daughter's wedding with the Swans. That's the most important matter for you. Once you become in-laws of the Swans, the Locks will also benefit from it. Look what you're saying. Alexander said humbly but looked proud. The two of them complimented each other again. Alexander and Jennifer had lunch at the Lock family's residence and left in a hurry. Jean and George stayed. The Locks hired a public relations team to prepare a response plan for them. At 4:00 p.m. Jean brought George along with Thetis and went to a private banquet hall of the Locks for the press conference. Before the press conference began, Jean gave Monica a call. The moment the call was connected, a loud voice came from the other end. Jean, why didn't you pick up my call? Jean rubbed her ear. It was deafening. Jean knew Monica too well. She did not even need to think to know what Monica was going to say. Besides, it was not suitable for her to talk to Monica at the Lock family's residence, so she put her phone on vibration and let her call her as much as she wanted. At this moment, Jean was only calling Monica because she went to the toilet. She said, "It wasn't convenient for me." "Why? Are the Lawrences threatening you?" "No, tell me honestly, are you currently under house arrest by the Lawrences? Don't let your imagination run wild." "I'm fine. I'm going to face the reporters together with Thetis now." "What did you say?" Monica shouted at the top of her lungs. "Don't be agitated. It's not what you think." Jean did not explain because she could not explain it. She said, "Just drive to the entrance of the address I sent you and wait for me. I'm afraid that I won't have a car to leave later." "What?" Monica was confused. She felt as if her heart and lungs were exploding. When she saw the news of Thetis fooling around with some other woman outside, she fumed with rage. How could Jean be so indifferent? Jean did not say anything more and hung up the phone. She quickly sent the address to Monica and wrote a text message. "Wait for me here." Following that, she turned off her phone and walked out of the bathroom. When she walked out, Thetis was already waiting for her outside. His expression was extremely ugly. Due to the situation, he endured and did not throw a tantrum. "It's about time," Thetis said coldly. "Okay." Jean held George's hand and followed Thetis to the venue. George stayed at the entrance and waited for her. Jean and Thetis went in. Clicking sounds could be heard continuously. Thetis and Jean sat in the middle. Thetis said, "I'm very grateful to the media for attending this press conference. First of all, I would like to express my deep apology for my personal misconduct that caused a negative impact on the public." As he spoke, Thetis stood up and bowed. He would first apologize to gain sympathy. Everything was arranged according to what the Crisis Public Relations had arranged. Thetis sat down and continued, "Everything reported on the news is true. I've indeed done something to let Jean down. Although I was framed and drugged, what happened happened. A mistake is a mistake. I'll bear the responsibility for this mistake. I'll." Thetis secretly pinched his thigh, so his eyes turned red. He looked like he was very regretful. "I only hope that Jean can give me a chance. I really love Jean. The first time I saw her, I fell in love with her. I've been looking forward to our wedding, and I also treat George as my own son. I never thought that I would make such a mistake. I really wanted to kill myself for a second." Thetis was trying to gain sympathy. The reporters looked at him. They did not sympathize with him, but they were not very harsh with him either. There was even a few seconds of awkwardness at the scene. A paid reporter hurriedly asked, "Second young Master Locke, did you cheat this time because you were drugged by the other party?" "Yes, I didn't expect her to treat me like that. She has always liked me, but I've told her clearly that I like Jean. I'm getting married, so I asked her not to pester me. Who knew, she threatened me by saying that she'd commit suicide. I didn't expect her to drug me when I went to find her. Right now, I regret that I was too kind toward her. I even suspect that all the bad things I did with her were her schemes to destroy the relationship between me and Jean." Thetis looked like he was in pain. "Ms. Lawrence, will you forgive Thetis?" The reporter looked at Jean. According to the script, she would forgive Thetis and even say many good things about him. However, she said, "I won't forgive him." She uttered those words strongly.